Why the game of life is very similar to a Pokémon game. And no, this has nothing to do with making your pets battle one another. Irrespective of that, you'd be surprised how similar life is in comparison to a Pokémon game. And in this video, I'll delve deep into the similarities between the two. So, if you're new here, I treat my life as a video game, as you can probably imagine based on the channel name and logo associated with it. I very rarely play actual video games myself these days, since I treat life itself as a video game. I have my own stats I level up each day, instead of leveling up some non-existent character in a video game, or racking up my points in some leaderboard in some game. I do that, but in real life instead. Now, there are some transferable stats/progress from Pokémon that can be applied to real life. Example, Pokémon Trainer is considered a career/a job. As you get more gym badges, you progress in your career. You also earn more money from each battle won. Much the same way you earn more money from a career the more qualified you are. You can also level up your Pokémon by training them/grinding. The same way you'd grind in the actual gym to level yourself up. You can also invest in your assets, like your Pokémon, using certain items like proteins for the attack stat or calcium for the special attack stat. These are expensive items in-game, but using them on your Pokémon can increase their power, which leads to easier progress in gyms, meaning you make more money from trainers faster than you would otherwise. In this case, you've invested into your Pokémon, and that investment has paid for itself by providing you faster progress in your career, aka your gym badge challenge, as well as you being able to earn more money from trainers faster. So you can see how several traits of Pokémon tie into the real world. I'm going to elaborate more on why in a moment, but I'll introduce some stats in real life that I will be using as a comparison to a Pokémon game. Stick with me as you'll understand why these stats correlate to a Pokémon game once I've talked about them. First stat, career. This basically refers to a specific type of job that requires some form of upskilling, whether that be a university degree, a completed apprenticeship, a TAFE course, or even just on-the-job experience that most people don't have. This is separate from a standard job, since a standard job usually doesn't require any specific skill set/education/training, and it can realistically be performed by most people. And because it can be performed by most people, the pay is generally on the lower end, and any pay raises are hard to come by, since if you don't want to work for this income, someone else will. If you're a brain surgeon and you don't want to work for this income, someone else will. Oh wait, no they won't. No one else has those skills/qualifications to perform brain surgery. So I guess the hospital is going to have to pay you what you want in that case. Using me personally as an example, my full-time job/career in accounting has something similar. If I don't want to work for $60,000 a year, no worries, someone else will. Oh wait, not really. No one with my education/experience will work for that income. So the labour market has to pay up. However, at my current level, I can't be demanding my work to pay me $140,000 a year. I'm not that valuable yet, and no other company would pay that for my skill set either. Thus, my salary is around $90,000 a year at the moment. For my regular viewers, real quick, I'll elaborate more on this figure in a later video that'll come out after July 2024. But I was in a meeting the other day and the seniors basically confirmed my pay raise/promotion. So my salary has now increased, but I'll talk more on that in another video. For the sake of this one, $60,000 is simply too low for my skill set, since no one who can do what I can do would work for that income. No company would pay someone like me $140,000 either, so that's why career is not the same as a job. I also work at a supermarket on the weekends part-time, but since that job has a low barrier to entry, there's not a lot of skills or anything you need for that job, us supermarket workers can't really be demanding pay raises that high because the company will be like, alright, fuck off then, we'll pay someone else who will work for that money. There's always some teenagers who want a job, or there's always some new immigrants to the country who just want to work, who will work for that income. So that's why you can't really be demanding more pay as a lower skilled worker, but as a higher skilled worker, you can. Next stat, money, self-explanatory. Basically, every game I can think of has some form of currency. Whether they actually use the term money or not depends on the game, but they all pretty much have money, just like reality. Next stat, defense. Basically, in real life, it refers to protecting your ability to sustain yourself. It's sort of apportioned across career, money, and investments anyway, but there are some instances in the game of life where you should be focusing on this stat instead of others, but that's not important for this video. Next stat, aesthetics. It refers to your appearance. Generally, it's gym-related, but I use it when I pay for stuff like dental work, anti-wrinkle Botox, laser hair removal, etc. But for this video, just use it in terms of gym/training. Next stat, investor. Basically just using your already existing money to magnify your money further. Instead of just working more, you can utilize your money for more money. Next stat, brand/business. Brand refers to like having a well-known brand name. If I said to you 10 years ago, Mr. Beast, you would have thought I just made that up on the spot. If I said Mr. Beast to you in 2024, you'd probably know it's some famous YouTuber dude. That's a fantastic example of a brand name. You build a brand. Next stat, mental health, self-explanatory. Last stat, relationships, again, self-explanatory. Sorry to my regulars who've already heard me talk about that before, but I guess a little refresher doesn't hurt, and you never know who's a newer viewer here, so providing some context never hurts. And if you are new here and want to know more about these stats, I made a more detailed video about it before. So those are the stats in the game of life. Pretty much anything important you do relates to one of these 8 stats. Now, let's see how the game of life relates to a Pokemon game. Career. So, correlating this to Pokemon, this would be like becoming a Pokemon trainer, or working your way up to be the Pokemon champion. You initially start out with no experience, your Pokemon's levels are low. It's the exact same thing with your career. Whatever career you pick, whether it be some white-collar office role like law, finance, accounting, or something like teaching, nursing, engineering, or some blue-collar role like any trade like plumbing, electrical, carpentry, building. On your very first day starting out on this journey, you are so low-leveled, you can't do anything noteworthy at all. You haven't done the levels. You haven't had enough time grinding your level up. However, as you grind on in Pokemon, your Pokemon gains levels. It can now do more. The progress has shown in the Pokemon's level. Now, providing you keep the same Pokemon, you always retain that progress. If you use another Pokemon, that progress you made doesn't transfer over to the new Pokemon. It's the same with a career. If I decided I wanted to become a plumber, all those years of accounting experience and accounting study doesn't transfer over. I have to start over. Same with if I decided to level up a new Pokemon instead of my starter. Now in Pokemon, you eventually reach the first gym leader. Once you beat them, you get a badge. It's a sign of your progression. It's a milestone. It's a checkpoint. It's the same as passing a few exams in your degree. After your first year of uni, providing you actually beat the boss battles, aka the exams, aka the gym leaders, that progress is done. You now have a new checkpoint in your game. In Pokemon, no matter what you do, you can't lose that gym badge. In real life, no matter what you do, you can't lose that exam progress. You've passed it. No need to worry about it anymore. Move on to the next one. You don't need to worry about the first gym badge anymore. Move on to the second gym badge. Keep in mind what I just said, how you save your progress, how you have an established checkpoint in your progress, in your journey. This will come into play later on. Another thing in Pokemon is being able to use moves outside of battle to remove obstacles. Anyone who's played Pokemon knows what I mean, but for anyone who doesn't, basically in Pokemon games you can't just skip straight to the Pokemon League, aka the end of the game. You have to progress through the story, and there's specific roadblocks put in place, and you can't get past these roadblocks until certain criteria is met. Same goes with a career. Most apprentices in trades are 4 years, at least they are here in Australia. You need to be fully qualified before being able to do anything major like starting your own business or being hired for the more advanced jobs. It doesn't matter if you know everything after 3.5 years, you need to stick through that apprenticeship and get that qualification. If you went to uni, if your degree requires 24 credit points, it doesn't matter if you have 23 credit points and already know all the answers on your last exam, until you pass that exam and get that last credit point and get your degree, you can't get certain jobs, since they require you to have your degree. Apply this to Pokémon. It doesn't matter if the gym leader has 2 level 25 grass types and you have a level 50 fire type, you'd clearly win, but until you've actually beaten the gym leader, you can't progress in the game. Using myself as an example again, these jobs here as a finance manager require a CPA. For anyone who doesn't know, it's like a post-tertiary qualification, aka something you do after uni, specifically for accounting here in Australia. The United States also uses this designation. The UK has some different qualifications. We also have CA here in Australia, but basically it's something extra you need to do after uni to unlock many high-paying accounting-related roles. But anyway, they require you to have your CPA. I'm currently 4 out of 6 units done with my CPA, and by the time you're watching this, I could be on 5 out of 6. We'll see, but even though I'm kind of close, I still haven't actually gotten the CPA yet. This CPA is a roadblock in my career. I can't get through to the next stage in my career until I get this. The same way I can't move on to the next part of the Pokemon game until I pass the Gym Leader's Challenge. There's no awards for a half-finished job. You gotta complete the task. Now, as for job interviews, there's something similar here too. If you lose the gym battle, what happens? You go back to the Pokemon Center and you can just try again. If you fail a job interview, no worries, you go back to where you were before that job interview and you try again at a different company. There's also something similar with your experience/your level. If you lose a gym battle in Pokemon, your Pokemon doesn't lose all of its levels and goes back to level 1 or level 5 if it was a starter. It retains those levels and those experience points it gained through the journey. Same goes with your career. If I get fired from a job I had for 3 years, do I lose all that experience? No, I retain those. I can go back to the last checkpoint and try again. Instead of challenging the gym leader with my retained experience, I am challenging the labor market with my retained experience. If my Pokemon was level 25 when it lost the gym battle, it's still level 25 when I go back to the checkpoint. If I had 3 years of work experience in this particular field when I lost the job, I go back to the checkpoint with my 3 years of experience intact. I don't go back to level 1. I don't go back to having no experience. I still have my experience points. Keep this in mind, it'll be relevant when we talk about another stat later. There's also similarities with farming XP. Grinding wild Pokemon doesn't give you money, but it does gain you XP. You don't get any money from studying, but you do gain XP. You farm XP. You don't have to farm money in this case. On that note, money is similar to a Pokemon game, since you need currency to buy stuff. As you go on, the stronger trainers you beat give you more money. However, grinding wild Pokemon doesn't give you money. It's the same with studying. You don't get any money from studying, but you do gain XP. You farm XP, you don't farm money in this case. Studying would be comparable to battling wild Pokemon. You don't get paid for it, but you do get XP. Battling trainers would be a way to farm money, although in this case you'd still be getting XP. However, in the post-game of most Pokemon battles there's a thing called the Battle Tower, or something similar. Basically here, your levels are locked and you don't gain XP from winning, but you gain battle points. This is a different form of currency. It's not money, but the battle points are a form of barter that can be exchanged for goods. So in this case, when you work a job in real life that doesn't have any correlation to your career, example, if you want to work in tech, but your fast food job doesn't have any XP correlated with that, in this case, your fast food job would be like farming battle points. You don't gain any XP from it, aka any experience related to your career in tech, but you are still receiving some benefit from it. You're receiving a currency that can be used to purchase other goods and services, just like in real life. So, battling wild Pokemon is like studying. You don't get any currency from it, but you gain relevant XP for the rest of your journey. Winning battles at the battle tower is like working a shift at your part-time job. You don't gain any relevant XP for the rest of your career/journey, but you do gain currency from it. The best of both worlds would be to battle wild trainers, in which you both get XP and currency, the same way your best bet is to work a job that has some XP relevant to your career. This is harder to do at uni, but once you're actually working in your field, you're battling wild trainers. You're farming XP and currency, as opposed to battling wild Pokémon or battling at the battle tower, whereby you're only gaining one or the other, not both. Me, as an example again, working in my accounting job each day is like battling a wild trainer battle. I'm farming both XP and currency. I get paid, and I gather another day of experience that can be used in the labour market. My supermarket job on the weekends is like battling at the battle tower. I don't gain any XP, but I get currency. My CPA studies are like battling wild Pokémon. I don't get any currency for it, but I do gain XP for the rest of my journey. The XP gained also increases as you face tougher competition. Makes sense. It's the same with your career. When you work in more challenging roles, you gain better XP on your resume. If I work at some small business, yes, I gain XP, but it's not as valuable as XP gained from the large companies. I'll use accounting as an example since that's what I'm familiar with. I'm not going to sit here and start yapping about comparable options in engineering or tech or any other career. I work in accounting, so that's what I know. Now in accounting, you have the big four: Deloitte, Ernst & Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and KPMG. These companies provide fantastic resume credit, aka the best XP for your career in accounting. However, the work is grueling. Basically, no one likes it. Everyone hates it, but it's for the greater good. Contrast this to Pokémon. What Pokémon gives me more XP? Battling the wild level 60 legendary or the wild level 5 bird Pokémon? Right, the higher level legendary. The battle is harder, hence you'd get more XP as your reward for winning the battle. Now, it's not a night and day difference in terms of career XP in reality. It's not like any accountant who hasn't worked at a big four is severely underleveled compared to those that have. It's probably more so a level 40 versus a level 50 in terms of XP. I work for a smaller company, but my XP for my career is still good. It's just not as good as those who've worked in the big four. I've had promotions in my role, so the XP I'm gaining now is greater as I have more responsibilities. However, if I had stayed where I was when I first started, the work would be way easier, but the XP is not as good. Yes, I am still gaining years of experience, but the skills and knowledge gained aren't as valuable as the skills and experience I'm gaining now in my current promoted role. If I worked as a part-time bookkeeper, yes, I'm gaining accounting-related experience, but the battle is easier. Not only am I part-time, but there's less technical work involved. If I worked 80 hours a week as a senior at a Big Four accounting firm, the battle is much harder, and thus the XP for the resume/career skills are far greater. Like in Pokémon, I can just battle wild level 5 birds over and over again, but the XP is much lower. Conversely, I could battle the wild level 45 to 50 Pokémon in the Victory Road. The battles are harder, but in exchange, the XP is greater. Keep in mind, providing you don't switch careers/switch Pokémon, all that XP is retained. You never lose it. This will be relevant later. So, in terms of a career, there are many similarities to a Pokémon game. You have roadblocks, you have objectives, there's XP, differing levels of challenges. The game of life is quite similar to a Pokémon game. I suppose now is a good time to talk about money, although admittedly it's pretty self-explanatory. You do stuff in a game to get money, like the same in real life. You do something, usually work, and you get currency in exchange that you can use to buy numerous items. As the game goes on, both in Pokémon and in real life, the items you generally purchase get more expensive. Example, you need 200 Pokecoins or whatever to buy a standard Pokeball. That's enough to get you by early on. However, as you go on in your journey, you find more difficult Pokemon, more difficult challenges, and they're harder to catch. So instead, you need an Ultra Ball, which costs 1,200 Pokies. 6 times the cost of the Pokeball. Inflation, am I right? Central bankers in Sinnoh need to be stopped. It's the same with healing items. It's like, what, 100 Poke for a potion to heal 20 hit points? Go on later in the game, it costs 3,000 for a full restore, aka to fully heal yourself. When you're a level 50 Pokemon, a simple potion isn't going to cut it. You're going to need a full restore to heal yourself in battle. But if you are just starting out in the game, you can't afford a full restore. Well, I mean, you can't consistently afford a full restore. Let's disregard the fact that you can't even buy them that early in the game. Even if you could, you'd have trouble funding recurring $3,000 Poke payments for them. However, later in the game, when you're earning more per battle from battling tougher trainers, you earn more income per battle. The same way you earn more per week at your job when you're 35 as opposed to 15. Providing you progressed in your career, that is. If I never leveled up my Pokemon, aka my career, I'd still be battling the same weaker trainers and earning the same lower income, the same way you'd still be earning the lower income from a low-skilled job. The trainers on Route 1 pay far less than the trainers on Route 20. The jobs with a level 1 skill set pay far lower than the jobs that require a level 20 skill set. So, as you earn more later in your career, aka later in the Pokemon game, you can afford the more expensive items such as full restores and Ultra Balls. And you probably need these to continue progressing forward. Like if I'm trying to battle Cynthia's Garchomp, and I need my Mamoswine to be healed up to counter with an Avalanche, I can't be using a mere potion to restore its HP by only 20 points. I need a full restore. Otherwise, I lose a battle before my Mamoswine is fully healed. Yes, the potion is substantially cheaper, but in order to properly progress, I need to be forking out the money for the more expensive items, like a full restore, and I'm only able to afford those thanks to the higher income I receive from battling tougher trainers. And I only got to these tougher trainer battles due to progressing in my career in the Pokemon journey by leveling up my Pokemon. Let's use myself again as an example. My CPA studies. These subject costs go up literally every year, and I'm not even joking. In a prior video, I talked about the cost of a CPA subject in my voice recording, and by the time I went to gather the image to show the cost of that, the price went up. Apparently, CPA is not even a profitable company, which is interesting. That makes sense as to why they need to keep jacking up their prices. Anyway, as I mentioned earlier, I need the CPA qualification as it's a roadblock to progressing in my career, aka the $140,000 finance manager roles require you to have your CPA, no questions asked. The same way you need 5 gym badges to get past this particular roadblock in Pokemon, such as needing 5 gym badges to use Surf outside a battle, so you can travel to another part of the map and continue your journey. So anyway, I need to pay for this. Well, actually, my work pays for 1 attempt per subject, so in a way they pay for it, but let's just say I had to pay for it myself. That's $1,335 to enroll in 1 subject. Yuck! However, this is affordable to me still due to my higher income I earn from my higher skilled job. If, however, I was 15 years old and I was still earning $11 an hour at the supermarket and I only worked 3 to 8 hours per week, would this be affordable to me? Not really. I could probably afford it after a few months of work, but it's not something I could consistently buy. Moreover, at this point in my game, as a 15-year-old who hasn't even finished high school yet, let alone university, paying for this subject enrollment is simply not a good idea. You don't need this yet. Let's disregard the fact that you need to have a degree before completing the CPA. It's like, why are you paying for a CPA unit when you're not even done with high school? Don't jump the gun. Paying for this now is not only unaffordable on a consistent basis, but it's also unnecessary. The same way a full restore works in the early game of Pokemon. Yes, you could probably afford 1 after numerous battles, but then what? Why would you use a 3000 Poke full restore on a Pokemon with only 23 hit points? Just use a potion that costs like 100 Poke that heals 20 hit points. That's a much better use of your money. Now back to the CPA studies, having this qualification helps me progress in my career, as I mentioned before, the same way a full restore helps me progress through the Pokemon League towards the ultimate goal. It doesn't make sense to be paying for potions. Yes, they're cheaper, but the benefit isn't really there. It would be like if I decided to enroll in a Cert 3 in bookkeeping, for example, or some short course on using some accounting software. Yes, it's probably cheaper and easier than the CPA program, but at this stage in the game, it's not worth it. You're at a point where it's beneficial to fork out the extra money for the CPA subject, aka the full restore, as opposed to the short course or the potion. There's something similar in terms of shelter costs. When you're 15 to 16 years old, you most likely aren't paying for rent/a mortgage. However, when you're 35, in many cases, you could be paying rent/a mortgage. This is yet another more expensive cost that you don't have in the early game. Can you afford rent/a mortgage on a level 1 income? Probably not. I see many people struggling with that these days, and spoiler alert, the rental crisis will only get worse, but that's not what this video is about. However, if you have a level 20 income, you'd be able to afford rent/a mortgage just fine. The game gets more expensive as you go on, but unlike Pokemon, generally, you can't just decide to stay on Route 1, you have to move forward. I suppose you could just continue to work part-time minimum wage jobs and live with your guardians, the same way you can just keep your starter unevolved and have weak battles from time to time in the Route 1 grass. But where's the fun in that? I want to have fully evolved Pokemon and trounce the Pokemon League. I want to annihilate Cyrus in the Distortion world. I don't want to sit on Route 1 doing nothing. The same way I don't want to earn less than $40,000 a year, I want to earn $120,000 plus per year. I want to have the prestigious designation of CPA after my name. I don't want people hearing my name and thinking, oh yeah, he hasn't really done much with himself, has he? The last thing I'll mention on money relating to a Pokemon game in real life is the money handout from your parents that you get at the start of the game doesn't mean anything if you don't do anything with it. When you start Pokemon, I'm pretty sure you start out with 3,000 Poke. Pretty good, but does this income carry you throughout the game? No, it helps for sure, but it doesn't get you very far. You can't even afford 3 Ultra Balls with that. Sometimes, the wild Pokemon you want to catch takes a few Ultra Balls, so you end up wasting some money. But sometimes, it's needed to grab that valuable Pokemon to assist you in your journey. The same way I had to fork out money for 2 attempts at financial reporting for my CPA studies. Work paid for 1 attempt, I paid for the other 2. Sometimes, you waste money on failed attempts, but it's steps to success. Sometimes you wasted some money on a few Ultra Balls trying to catch that Pokemon that'll help you drastically in your journey, but it happens sometimes. The same way I essentially lost money by failing the exam twice, hopefully not a 3rd time, but as I said before, my results don't come out for a while at the time of writing this script, so each Ultra Ball you threw and failed was a step closer to the successful catch, to the successful attempt. Each exam I failed was a step closer to the successful attempt. So you'll need a recurring income stream to continue to progress through the game, not only for stuff like food but for items that help you along your journey. Example, in real life, a $5,000 handout from your parents is not going to carry you for the rest of your life. It'll help, but it won't get you very far. So that's why money in real life is very similar to money in a Pokemon game. Next up, gym/aesthetics. The analogy here is XP again, the same way I used it with a career. The time spent in the gym is XP. After enough XP, you level up, and the XP gained can't be lost. In real life, you can regress from the gym. Like if you eat too huge of a calorie surplus, you gain the fat, but in terms of muscle, once you gain the myonuclei, you can't really lose it. The same way you retain the XP gained from wild Pokemon battles. There's probably some funny joke that could be made here between the real-life gym and the gym in Pokemon, like battling the gym leader, who's the gym leader in real life at a real-life gym. But at the time of recording this script, I've got a lot on my plate and I'm not switched on enough to make a joke about this. Maybe someone in the comments who's funnier/more creative than me can. But anyway, not much else to say really. Working out is just farming XP for your physique. Yeah, you won't level up after 1 battle, but after 1,000 battles you definitely will. Next stat, investor. This would be akin to putting your unused Pokemon in the daycare. In Pokemon, well in some games, there's a facility where you can put your Pokemon. Its main purpose is to breed, but your Pokemon gain XP just by sitting there. Instead of going out and leveling them up yourselves, aka working for it, you just sit back and let someone else do it for you. This method is much slower than going out there yourself, but it can be a good strategy to level up your lesser used Pokemon. Same in real life, it's more efficient to just go to work than to try to get passive income from investing. You can make big bucks with swing trades, but that's a gamble. Now, depending on what the market does, I've got somewhere above $900 in profit at the time of recording. Now that I've said that, watch my portfolio plummet after recording this voiceover, or the second I upload this video. But I make about $1,200 for working 2 weekends at my supermarket job. It basically took me 4 days to earn more than what my stock portfolio has generated over several months. Now yes, my intention was to increase my income for the future, not this year specifically, but it goes to show you the more efficient way to progress in your money is by actually working, generally not investing. And I could put more of my own cash into the stock market, but I have a real estate investment I'm saving up for, but again, not the point of this video. Like in this stock portfolio, I've only really put money that I can afford to lose. Like this whole $9,000 plus amount could plummet to zero, and it wouldn't impact my day-to-day ability to sustain myself, or it wouldn't impact my real estate calculations, like my down payment, it wouldn't affect any of that. So that's why I don't have more money in this. Obviously, if I had more money in this, I would have a lot more profit, since my portfolio is up 10-ish% or some shit at the time of this screenshot. So obviously 10% of $100,000 is a lot more than 10% of $9,000. Anyway, back to Pokemon. Yes, you can get money from investing your money. It's the same way you can gain XP from having your Pokemon sit in the daycare, but it's more efficient to just go and work. The same way it's more efficient to go and battle wild Pokemon. It is a good idea to invest your spare money though. If that money wasn't going to be used to increase your career, like my CPA studies, it's better to pay $1,335 for a CPA subject instead of leaving that $1,335 in the stock market. But if I've already paid for my CPA subject, or real estate, or my brand/business, then that money is better used in the stock market. The same way your Pokemon sit in the daycare if they're not going to have the chance to be used in battle soon anyway. The investor stat is similar to Pokemon in the sense of swing trading and trying to battle an over-leveled Pokemon. If I gamble on a stock before earnings, I can stand to make a lot. I can also lose a lot. If I try to use my level 10 Pokemon to defeat a level 18 Pokemon, yes, it can happen, but it's a gamble. I can obviously lose that battle easily, but if I win, there's some really good XP to gain for that Pokemon. So there's an element of investing in Pokemon, like there is in real life. Next up, brand. Now, here is where the game gets juicy. In a standard Pokemon game, you have checkpoints. You can save your progress and continue on. If you lose a gym battle, you lose a trainer battle, you just go back to the nearest Pokemon Center and continue on. However, in amongst the Pokemon community, there's a different way of playing the game of Pokemon. Much the same there's different ways of playing the game of life. And that is a nuzlocke. Now for anyone who doesn't play Pokemon, or is as into the community as others, a nuzlocke is a way to play Pokemon that involves a different rule set. There's several rule changes, but the main rules I want to focus on are 1. If a Pokemon faints, it's dead and you can't use it anymore. And 2. If you lose a battle, the game is over. So, if your Pokemon faints, usually you just heal it. You retain the XP and you carry on. However, in a nuzlocke, you lose all that XP since that Pokemon is no longer usable. It's the same as what I said before about retaining your experience. You keep that same Pokemon, you retain that experience. If you keep the same career, you retain the experience acquired. However, if you switch Pokemon, if you switch careers, if you lose that Pokemon, you lose the experience. Now, this same principle applies to a business in real life. If it fails, you lose that progress. You lose that progression. Let's use an example of a business in real life. If you run a cafe and you have to shut down due to hard economic times/government policies, you lose all that goodwill with your customers. Those customers who usually went to your cafe as part of their routine will now find another. Even if you somehow opened a new one in the same area 6 months later, those prior customers will likely stick with the current cafe they visit. You have to build your brand name, your clientele, from the beginning. Another example, KFC, is a well-known brand name. I like KFC. I don't have it much anymore since I'm pretty rigid with my diet, and the cost of a takeout meal is more than the cost of my daily diet. But I know I like KFC. However, if a new fast food joint opened up called Joe's Chicken Shop popped up in my area, I don't know what this is like. I've never heard of it. In this case, that business is building a brand name, its clientele, from scratch. Now I know what you might be thinking. What if I just closed my business and reopened it later on? Wouldn't I have the same brand goodwill? I just have all my brand goodwill and the customer and client base and pick up where I left off, just like a standard Pokémon game. Well, why would you temporarily close your business? The logistics are outside the scope of this video, but if you close your business, you generally have all the debt written off. Maybe you pay it all off beforehand, but in that case, why would you close your business only to reopen it later? There's some niche cases, sure, but my cafe example would still apply. People would learn to live without your business. If you were to declare bankruptcy, have your debts written off, and reopen again using the same name, and thus retaining most of your brand name progress, that's phoenixing, which is illegal. Let's say KFC shut down, got its debts written off, and reopened with the same name again 6 months later. I still know what KFC is. It's not like when KFC bankrupt, their memories were wiped from my brain. I still know it's good fast food. They don't have to build a brand name from scratch. But this time, they have minimal debts, since their prior debts were written off. This is an example of phoenixing, which is illegal. Now that's like for an actual proper business in real life. However, being on YouTube, which is where you're seeing this video from, most of you guys have probably heard of starting your own YouTube channel as a business. Well, let's run through that as well. My channel has over 70,000 lifetime views, more than 1,100 subscribers, and currently above 3,500 hours of watch time in the last 365 days. Not quite eligible for ad monetization. However, if I had started a new channel, I'd lose all that watch time, all those views, and all those subscribers. I need to start from scratch. Like, yeah, maybe if I made a channel with a similar name and told everyone I was starting over, a handful of people would probably come over, but I doubt I'd get all 1,100 plus subscribers to come over, especially when you realize a lot of those subs may be from inactive channels / people who just don't watch / listen to me anymore. Here, it's the same thing. I need to start from scratch. Maybe I know how to make videos better than I did when I first started, which is a sort of skill I acquired from being on YouTube for a while. Yes, I retain that, but in terms of the brand progress itself and the channel progress itself, I essentially start from scratch. This is not the case with a career. If I somehow lost my current full-time job, I still have experience as an accountant in industry. If I fail my exam again, I still have 4 prior exams completed. Any failures with the career just bring me back to the last checkpoint. Any failures involving a business / brand essentially reduces you to 0. The upsides of a business are obviously way higher than a career, in most cases anyway. Even the high-level surgeons earning boatloads spent decades in schooling and had decades of experience before getting to that point, so you could possibly reach that level of income well before they did with their career. However, what are the chances of this happening? How likely is your business to become profitable, let alone out-earning those who worked hard at a standard career path? And even then, you have heaps of landmines along the way that could reset you to zilch. You're playing a nuzlocke. Any hard roadblock can mean the end of the road. Check out this clip from Peachal, a guy who basically does Pokemon nuzlockes for a living. What a life, eh?
Here comes Phoebe's Dusclops. This one has Double Team and Rest, which, if you're not prepared for, is a run killer.
Notice his wording. It's a run killer. It doesn't matter if you know for a fact your business could generate $10 million in profit per year in year 10. If you don't survive years 4, 5, and 6, then it's irrelevant. If I have the perfect team to blitzkrieg through the Elite Four and Pokemon Champion, but I can't get past the evil team boss leader or the last gym leader, then I've stepped on a landmine. I've run into a roadblock. This is a run killer. The same with many businesses. Unfortunately, the financial system we all operate under is something we don't have much control over, and it's a huge factor in our finances. It doesn't matter if I earn $50,000 a year, if all that money is gobbled up by taxes due to the country I live in and my rent payments, due to the real estate that was inflated via government policies. Side tangent, but this is another example of why the investor stat is important. In some cases, you can earn heaps, but you don't have much to show for it due to the financial system. Example, higher tax brackets and no assets in place to reduce the tax bill. Or your income gets swallowed up by your shelter costs due to not securing real estate/assets earlier. But that's not the point of this vid. So, there's many run killers in the world. Many businesses got killed off during the shutdowns in 2020. Now, personal example, I used to be a personal trainer at a gym franchise called Good Life, and one guy who ran a business out of the gym I worked at got his business destroyed by the lockdowns. His business was doing really well, had a massive client base, had other trainers working under him, everything. But it got destroyed by the lockdowns. His business still exists now, but damn did it fall off. Not his fault. The shutdowns killed all the momentum his business had. And people just got used to being lazy/working out at home/having their friend trainer teach them, etc. A huge landmine. A huge run killer that this guy didn't recover from. Now, although he didn't get reduced to 0, he did lose a lot. It's like he lost 3 out of 6 Pokémon required for the Elite Four. The run isn't over, but he is severely handicapped now. He was better off in late 2019 than he is in the middle of 2024, which is generally not how life should go. You should be getting better as the years go on. Meanwhile, me, for example, I lost my second accounting job I ever had during COVID. I did retain the experience I gained, although it was only like 4 months I had that job for, but the 2020 shutdown pushed me back to the last checkpoint. For many people, it set them back to the beginning. I have made fantastic progress since 2020. Some people are currently in a worse spot in 2024 than they were in 2020. Check out this post from the Men's Financial Advice Facebook page. These business owners have ran into a roadblock, a run killer, that being the current state of the economy. Whose fault is it? It's mostly the government's. Cynical people might say, oh, it's their fault they didn't adapt. Well, if everyone is tightening their spending, then how's it their fault? I suppose when Google's ad revenue was dropping in 2022/2023 that Google should have prepared better. Google doesn't know how to run a business if they weren't prepared for this down spending in ads, hey. Obviously, if you're as large as Google, you have many lifelines before you run into serious issues. But is your business going to be this large? Nope. Chances are it'll be just like these guys. You won't have as many lifelines to hold on to. You have to be careful of the run killers. One of the guys here says he lost everything. Yep, unfortunately, that's how a business works. Just like a Pokémon nuzlocke. It doesn't matter if you caught every rare Pokémon in the game with perfect IVs and a good nature, if you get some critical hits against you on a random trainer fight, and you lose that battle, the game is over. You can't transfer those elite Pokémon to your next save. You have to start from scratch. This guy who lost his business can't just pick up from where he left off. He was playing a nuzlocke. If I have my channel taken down, I lost the nuzlocke. I can't transfer my subs and watch time over to a new channel. I have to start them from scratch. Meanwhile, if I got fired from my accounting job, not only do I retain the XP I acquired, but I also still have the money I was paid. Same with my supermarket job. Check out my current bank balances. If I got fired from both jobs, I don't lose that, I still have that. With a business, if you decide to shut down, you generally have to pay your employees all the entitlements they are owed, and sometimes this can drain the remainder of the money you have in your business. Even when you decide to downsize your staff and make some positions redundant, you have redundancy payments to adhere to, so it's basically more repayments to make. So it's not as simple as, oh, bad times are coming, let's shut up shop, at least I still have this $50,000 in profit. Nope, gotta pay out your employees. Whereas if I was working as an employee myself and that happened to me, I get an extra payout, as well as retaining the experience I gained from working. At least, those are the employee entitlements that exist here in Australia. I don't know about every other country. So in this case, you might even have to dip into what you thought was secured loot. The nuzlocke has also impacted your checkpoints too. That checkpoint of your bank account has now been set back due to the failure of the nuzlocke challenge. If I failed in my career game, I get a checkpoint and I don't have to dip into my money stat to pay out anyone for any entitlements they get from shutting down my business, because I wasn't the one shutting down a business. Now, my specific situation is different since I'm playing both games. I have both a career and a brand, so I'm both playing a standard game as well as a nuzlocke. Obviously, I'm more focused on the main game, the one with checkpoints, and I'm doing the side hustle on the side. Wow, it's almost like a side hustle is called that because you're supposed to work on it on the side of your main job. Who knew? But anyway, you need to realize that when you start a business in real life, it's a nuzlocke. You don't have any checkpoints when you reach a roadblock or a run killer, whereas you generally have safety nets if you pursue a standard career. Next stat, relationships. Guess what game this falls under? A normal or a nuzlocke? Yep, correct, a nuzlocke. If I have a girlfriend of 5 years and we split up, I can't transfer those inside jokes, that chemistry, everything into a new girl tomorrow. If I start talking to a new girl, I need to start from scratch and build a relationship from there. It's the same with friends, but the work involved in a friendship is substantially less than a relationship. I can go 6 months without talking to some of my friends. I doubt you can go 6 months without talking to your partner. Be careful of cheaters and unfaithful partners, or slime bags. They're run killers for your relationship stat. The nuzlocke you're playing with a relationship is littered with all these people all over the place.
Honey, I'm home.
Oh, Olima, I wasn't expecting ya.
Baby.
The relationship stat is a nuzlocke, and that nuzlocke is full of run killers. There's also the chance of being saddled with an effect if the relationship goes south. I don't know how to word this in a universal video game term, but it's like a status effect. Actually, yeah, that's what it is. It's called a status effect. If a relationship fails, in some cases, it's not as simple as game over. You can get inflicted with a status effect. And no, I'm not talking about STDs, although that can be the case. I'm referring to things such as alimony or the potential of your assets being split up between the two of you. I mentioned before how you retain XP if you get fired from your career job. You also retain all the money you earned. It's not like if I got fired from my job after 2 years, I need to pay them back all those 2 years worth of income I earned. I retain that. But if you get divorced, / the courts deem you to be a de facto couple, and thus the courts order you to split your assets, guess what? That money you earned? Whoops, that's not a checkpoint anymore. That's a semi-nuzlocke. You got cucked by a run killer in your relationship stat, and now you got to fork out what you thought was secured loot. In some cases, you could be on the receiving end of this, which is a good thing for you, but generally my audience is male, so statistically speaking, you're the one who stands to lose financially from this. I'll go over stuff like this in a future video. Now, of course, not every relationship will end this way, and admittedly, I have a more pessimistic view on this, and I am somewhat jaded by my experiences, not me personally, just what I've observed over the years in many people, relatives, my friends, family members, others on the internet, stories I've heard about my friends' friends, so maybe I'm surrounded by a cynical bubble, or a less desirable relationship sort of bubble, if that makes sense. But am I wrong? Am I wrong in the sense that the courts will deplete your assets if your relationship fails? Am I wrong that divorce in countries such as the USA and Australia order you to liquidate your assets and split them up with your partner? And am I wrong in the sense that it's mostly men, aka most of my audience, that pays for this? No, I am not wrong. I'm correct. But I might be wrong about the relationship in your life. Perhaps you find someone great and never ever have to worry about any of this. But it's not as if these rules won't apply for you personally. It could happen, but maybe you find someone who isn't a wretched maggot that would ever do this to you. For the sake of this video, just understand our relationship is like a nuzlocke. If you fail, you start from scratch. And in some cases, or many cases in terms of relationships later on in the game, you can be inflicted with a status effect such as alimony that hinders your money stat, or you lose assets such as your retirement nest egg or your house. There's also child support. I'm not a fan of the way they calculate the figure you have to pay for child support. It's way too high in most cases since it's usually a percentage of your income, but you should have to help provide/pay for a kid if you have one. Now, I didn't talk about defense or the mental health stat here, since defense is kind of covered across the whole checkpoint versus nuzlocke thing, and mental health is subjective. And you can do stuff in a Pokemon game that isn't related to progressing, such as Pokemon contests. They provide nothing in terms of XP or currency, but they're fun. Just like some things you do for your mental health in real life don't result in any improvements to the rest of your stats. Sometimes you have your own personal time, and that's fine. So, that's why a Pokemon game is very similar to real life. There are many concepts that cross over between both worlds. Are you going to play the standard game with checkpoints? Or are you going to go for broke and play a nuzlocke? Or will you play a hybrid version of the game like me? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. That is all.